Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. Today we have a special guest, a good friend of mine, and that's Lou Rockwell, who organized and began the Mises Institute. He is now chairman of the board. Lou, welcome to our program.
Dr. Paul, it's great to be with you.
Good. I know you're an expert on everything, so that's why we're going to pick your brain a bit. But, you know, what's got my attention recently is the dilemma that we have trying to figure out and what our government and what our justice system is going to do with Assange, because, you know, he might be a traitor and we have to do something about it. And so it looks like what brought it to attention just recently, there was some sort of a legal document that inadvertently made a mistake and mentioned that Assange would be indicted. And of course it was a pure mistake. And Lou, I think they said all of a sudden it was in the hands, it was released, it was a big story for the New York Times. It's interesting how these things work out and they get their publicity that they're looking for.
Mm-hmm. No, it's true, and it's what an atrocity this is that they're going to. Julian Assange, of course, has in effect been in jail for 6 years at the Ecuadorian embassy in London, and now they're going to expel him, as the U.S. is demanding, and the U.S. is going to try him. My guess is in a secret trial, they're going to put him in prison for the rest of his life in one of these maximum security prisons in Colorado or someplace else where he's not allowed to ever talk to anybody. And what a treatment for a hero. This man is responsible for the great WikiLeaks site, which has told so many truths that governments didn't want told, and he's eloquent, he's smart, and it's just horrendous. I keep wishing that some magical thing is going to happen. He's going to be able to escape the embassy and go to a freer country, Russia, or someplace like that. But it looks like the U.S. is going to get him. Will they torture him? The U.S. tortures people. My guess is they will torture him in order to make him talk, or they think make him talk about everything he knows. It's just horrendous.
Well, you know, it's all about politics and hatred and why they don't want to hear the truth, but it's also part of the confusion about, you know, the First Amendment and First Amendment rights, because in a way they say that you're supposed to protect it, and the Democrats are all over the place. You know, if it looks like Trump's doing something wrong, then yes, they want an investigation. But if it looks like in this case they're a little bit worried, there'll be more revelations about Hillary and how the Democrats were involved with those emails. So that keeps going back and forth, and it's so hard to figure this out. But this is very confusing. But where they want us to be confused is this whole idea of First Amendment rights. It also comes up with this Jim Acosta, you know, on his First Amendment rights. You know, they don't. The one thing that I think is what happens on this interpretation is they don't understand why First Amendment rights has something to do with property rights. You know, First Amendment rights doesn't mean that you can say things politically that you want to say, no matter where, even in the White House, and disrupt things. Oh, it's his First Amendment right. I hope that gets mocked and you know, put down. But then, you know, the judge that ruled on that made it a little bit more complicated because he lost his pass over it. So my suspicion is that Trump isn't going to get pushed around there too much, and they're going to make the point that he has some authority about who says what, you know, in the White House. This whole idea that property is not important, I keep thinking about, well, what if you have a church? What if you have a Christian church and somebody wants to walk in and wants to give a long speech preaching atheism? And well, it's my First Amendment right. It gets so absurd, and yet nobody seems to challenge that. And I'm just surprised that Trump got so much trouble by, you know, trying to, you know, contain or restrain Acosta. But there's a lot that we have to learn about the First Amendment rights, because it certainly is confusing right now. And this court case is going to be confusing, because what they're going to try to do is prove that Assange is not a journalist. And Lou, I think you already imply he might be one of the greatest journalists, that we've seen and heard from in a long time.
Well, he certainly has. Even if we leave out, even if they were to say that he's not a journalist, he has free speech rights on his own property, and But yes, I think he's one of the great journalists of our time, maybe the greatest journalist of our time, to actually tell the truth. And one of the things that's interesting. If they do indeed succeed in arresting him, taking him out of the embassy and taking him to the U.S. and chaining him in a plane the way they do, and chaining him and bringing him in chains into the U.S. There's long been storied that WikiLeaks has all kinds of extremely hot information they've never released, and if this happens to him, it will all release to many, many different sites all over the world. Things that the U.S. government won't want released, the Democrats won't want released, the Republicans won't want released, although we would love to see them released. So that may happen. But yes, he's a great journalist, but you're exactly right. Of course, everything is all our rights are based on property rights. So we have a right to speak in our own home or in a place we would rent or a place we own. If we want to have a newspaper or a magazine, we have the right to start that and own it and publish things. You have property rights in this show, but yes, this is all misunderstood, and probably deliberately misunderstood. As to Jim Acosta, he's a very annoying guy. It seems to me Trump could just not have press releases and not have press conferences. Then, of course, the courts would say, well, you have to have press conferences, otherwise you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. So it seems like the judiciary is telling Trump what to do in every aspect. They really seem to me just out of control. We'll just have to see what happens.
Yeah, and I find it fascinating, something Greenwald pointed out, is that the progressive left has been on both sides of this issue. But right now, they don't want more exposure about what Hillary was doing, because this might open up a can of worms. It probably will if it's an honest trial. So some of these progressive Democrats, and they don't even deserve to be called a progressive, because at one time a progressive meant they believed in something. But they're joining in with Pompeo to try to squelch this whole thing and put this guy away and make sure that he never gets out and gets to do this again. And like you mentioned, he's even been charged, with treason. But the other thing, Lou, that I find difficult to figure out is, where does responsibility lie? When you have a Pompeo involved, then. We know what his position is, but it seems to me like there has to be a fair amount of responsibility put on the individual that appointed Pompeo to this position.
Of course, it's true Trump is responsible, and he's put so many bad people into office. John Bolton, just go down the list of all the neocons in his administration. It's really horrible, and he's not, of course, kept his promises. I wish he had kept his promises, that he was going to be more he's going to be a more peaceful president. He wanted peace with Russia. He wanted peace with other countries. It doesn't look like he's doing it. It doesn't look to me like he's going to stop the caravan either, by the way, coming into coming across the southern border. It's very disappointing, but of course you can't put your trust in princes or in politicians. With the sole exception of you, Ron Paul. You're the one guy we've been able to trust. The other ones, can't trust them.
right now the Democrats are saying that Matthew Whitaker, because he might be doing things that they don't like, well, he hasn't been appointed by the Senate. But of course, the tradition's there. You can have temporary appointments, and sometimes these temporary appointments last a long time. So, but they're using that. But at the same time, there's somebody, I think it's Miller, who has a court case coming up, and he's mayor here, has been indicted, but he's going to challenge it by saying that Mueller hasn't been appointed by the Senate either. So I think that's probably a powerful argument. I think that whole thing about this turning over this tremendous power, and it's been going on for a long time, and that ought to be clarified. If it needs some clarification by Congress or whatever, it needs to. So I think it's interesting that Miller is challenging this and said, well, Mueller wasn't appointed, so Whitaker wasn't appointed either. But once again, Lou, and and most of the people watching this station know that all this is fluff, in the sense that this is political. I bet you this massive confusion, I think also that not only is it all driven by politics, but the politics usually drives things for distractions. When something big is coming, something else occurs. And they've done that on purpose a lot of times. So when we hear this case coming up with Assange, maybe they want to be distracted, from, the Mueller case or something like that. But I think where the American people are so disgusted, and one of the reasons they elected Trump, is they're sick and tired of it. And American people know it. The percentage shows that probably 65, 70% of the American people agree with us. You can't believe what the government tells us. But it's such a shame that we don't get good replacements.
Well, they really are. They're all awful on both sides. I mean, the Republicans are terrible. The Democrats are terrible. And you're exactly right that they want to distract us when something big is going to happen, like, for example, the arrest of Assange and the suppression and, again, maybe the torture of Assange, that they want to, yes, have you pay attention to whether Whitaker is legitimately the temporary attorney general. But, of course, these appointments have existed since the earliest days of the Republic, and I think it's 9 months you can have him. So this is something Trump is able to do. I don't know whether Whitaker is a good guy or not. I must say I didn't like Sessions at all. I thought he was terrible. He was a guy who wanted to outlaw marijuana, wanted to outlaw the pressure the states, and really go into the states that have legalized pot and force them to undo that. So he was a bad guy, and of course he didn't do the things he should have done. He recused himself right away, saying that because he was somehow involved in the Russian deal. Well, like every single senator, he had a meeting with the Russian ambassador. They go around and they talk to the senators. He had nothing to do with Russia. He had no reason to recuse himself. And of course, by doing that, he put Rod Rosenstein into power, who then immediately appointed Mueller. And it's been a distraction. It's been, I think, a terrible thing. I'd love to see Mueller fired, but I guess Trump is afraid to do that because of Nixon and the Saturday Night Massacre and all that of some years ago. So again, it seems like we're not getting the things we ought to get. We're not getting the tax cuts we ought to get. We're not getting the deregulation we ought to get. We're just getting a bunch of baloney, and it's unfortunate. But of course, how is it different from the previous administration? So is it any different from? I always remember that when you were asked, had Obama ever done anything good? Well, you said, well, he hasn't bombed Iran yet. Well, Trump hasn't bombed Iran yet either. Although it's pretty unfortunate that he broke the U.S.'s word and repudiated the treaty with Iran and put all these horrendous sanctions on them. Sanctions that are intended as, by the way, Pompeo actually spoke the truth. He said the Iranians have to obey the U.S. if they want their people not to starve. And of course, it's true that these sanctions are anti-civilian sanctions wherever they're imposed. They're intended to punish the people, starve the people, deny them medicines and deny them all the things that one needs for life. So it's a horrible thing the U.S. is doing. It's horrible. And yes, Trump appointed Pompeo. Pompeo was, I think, a congressman from Kansas. He was known as very close to the Koch brothers. So that's an interesting point, too. But Pompeo, very, very, very bad guy. Bolton, a very bad guy. I was glad to see Mrs. Trump fire the assistant to Bolton when she was known as a very, how shall I say, a very rude and horrible person, and she had tried to yell at everybody and over the seating in the plane going on the Africa trip, and so Mrs. Trump asked for the president to fire her. He didn't pay any attention to her, so she issued a statement saying this woman needs to be fired, and so she was fired. So maybe she can get Bolton fired, maybe she can get Pompeo fired, but this one woman was a neocon. Glad she's gone. Mrs. Trump, fire more of these people.
You know, this mention about Pompeo being so calloused about starving children, it reminds me of the quote, from Madeleine Albright. And of course, she said when she was asked about 500,000 children dying from our bombing, well, that's the price you have to pay. So callous, and I think that has just made that whole mess in the Middle East. That statement alone has made things much worse. But what bothers me now is she did, and it was not a real big deal, and Pompeo is saying it, but it's happened, for a long time. Innocent people die and civilians die, and sometimes deliberately, and they make all kinds of excuses. But now it seems to be okay. Well, yeah, so they better do what we tell them, or we're going to starve their kids. And that falls into the line of what I've claimed our foreign policy is. We go to these countries because we are powerful, we have a lot of wealth, and we still control the currencies of the world. But they go in and we talk to other countries and we say, this is what we want you to do. And they say, okay, what's in it for us? Well, we're going to give you this, A, B, C, D. We'll put a base in here and we're going to give you a lot of money. And so most of them go along. But then if you say, no, we're not going to do it, then they end up getting the bombs. And it's so callous now, they just go ahead and do it. But one question as we finish up, Lou, is the thing that I don't think anybody has an easy answer for, and that has to do with figuring out our president and the executive branch, because there has been a lot of hope that figured he'd be independent, he wouldn't be controlled by the deep state, he was going to root it out, and then all of a sudden we turn around and he does is almost the opposite. We've already talked about Pompeo and the various appointments he's had. So I don't know whether he doesn't have a philosophy, whether this is a personal quirk, and he just ends up, all over the place, or could it be that there's still a lot of power behind the scenes called the deep state, and he listens more carefully to it than anybody wants to cave into, because of course the people that have him in the office like him, and he's tough on things and they like that, so they don't want to accept that. That I think is really up for grabs on exactly why things seem to be so disconnected, and how powerful is the deep state even with this administration.
Well, it's true, and I thought it was interesting the other day that the CIA announced that they thought that the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia had killed Khashoggi. And of course, this is an organization that never makes these kinds of announcements, certainly about that kind of thing. And of course, it was aimed at Trump. They hate Trump. It's one of the good things about Trump. The CIA hates him. So, but there's no question there is a deep state. It's a vast military and just gigantic apparatus, and located in Washington, D.C. and in Northern Virginia especially, and it's extremely powerful. And my guess is they're more powerful than the president. So Trump is not willing to go up against them if he ever was. If he was telling the truth about what he wanted to do, then they're not going to allow it. And he has to listen. He feels he has to listen to them, or maybe they'll kill him, because of course we know that these people are killers, and they wouldn't hesitate to kill the president. They've killed presidents in the past, John F. Kennedy and so forth. So it's an interesting. It's interesting if this was just going on there and had no effect on us or the rest of the world. We could just look at it like a TV show. Unfortunately, they're wrecking just tremendous murder and destruction all across the world, and not only the Middle East, but look at what they're doing in Yemen. They're killing so many people in Yemen. Americans don't even seem to care. They've never heard of Yemen. They don't care about Yemen, it's I must say it's disheartening. We don't even seem to have a peace movement anymore,
right.
Except for you, and it's disheartening. On the other hand, we do know the truth. We know what's right. We have to keep saying it. We have to keep telling the truth. We have to keep exposing the people in Washington, denouncing them, and we have to keep supporting, at least with our words, the great Julian Assange at Snowden in Russia, where Assange probably should have been. There are good people. There are heroes. There are people who risk their lives, tell the truth, and to protect our freedoms, to enhance our freedoms. So we have to support them, and the people who are against them, we have to look at them as nothing but dirt under our shoes.
Right. And Lou, one thing that one can figure out is financing this. We were supposed to have a system where we had the power of the purse in the Congress, and they could deny funds of this. But in two areas that we don't know what goes on, like the CIA, they have their own income stream, and we can't really check their budgets, and it's all hidden. But then you have the Federal Reserve combined with that, so they have control of the financial system, which is every bit as powerful as the military. But what you're talking about is there are some fractures in there, and the people who are in power, there's a contest now, bad guys against good guys, and the American people aren't interested, and that's where we have a problem. Lou, I want to thank you very much for being with us today, and for our audience, Lou Rockwell, Lou Rockwell's .com website, and also the Mises Institute website. But I want to thank our audience for tuning in today, and please come back soon.